Welcome to today's sit down, and I'm so happy that we get to do this sit down in my natural environment and not our guest's natural environment. I'm so excited to meet for the first time and interview Sibusiso Vilane. Now, if you don't know who the person is, let me just give you the short version. The first ever Black African to summit Everest, yes, Mount Everest, twice. Both on the north and the south side. So I am in awe of your presence. You're such a kind young man. It's been awesome meeting you. I can't wait to hear your story. Welcome to the show, sir.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Young man that you are, if we could snap our fingers and a couple of years ago, you're in high school, you're 17, who are you at that stage of your life, and how do you process, I'm going to go and climb Mount Everest? Was that ever a dream? Was it an aspiration? I know you're an avid runner, so you love the sport of running, but running and climbing, I don't know, they seem a little bit different. Who are you at the age of 17? What's important to you, and how do you process life at that stage of your life?
At the age of 17, I am in grade 8.
Okay.
That informs you that I started school quite late.
Yes.
And the reason for that was purely because at the age of 3, my parents separated. They didn't like each other. It wasn't really a great time. But my mother was always a person, not educated, illiterate, couldn't read nor write, who thought education was very important. And so she started channeling her energies towards me getting to school. But it would take up until at the age of 10 for her to find the means to enroll me. And then I started grade 1, age 10. So
amazing.
At 17, I knew that my dad wasn't fully responsible for my upbringing, wasn't even responsible for my schooling. And it had been a journey of hardship, of agony, of pain, of struggling. I didn't have a home. But my mother was really there for us, me and my sister. I didn't even have any aspirations, both adventure, both running, athletic. My main focus was that you need to get basic education that will allow you an opportunity to get a job, because one day you want to build a house for your mother and your sister, which will ultimately be your home, because I felt like I was homeless. So that forced me to really work very hard, or compelled me to work very hard, realizing that education was only going to be the way I would change my life. Or because I was looking around, I must be honest, I felt very poor. And, I remember that when my mother left me and my sister going to look for work, we looked around, and people that would have seen us, they would have said, poor children, and they will amount to nothing. So we were walking barefooted, no clothes to wear. And I do want to believe that my sister and I would see days at times without food. So up to the age of 17, things have been very desperate. They've been very tough, which had now made me to focus quite seriously, because I'd realized that you have nothing, but you can make things work in your life. Finish high school and then take on and lead your life. And that is what I worked on. I finished high school and thought, okay, now it's time for you to go and find a job. But I think you will agree with me that if you walk out with your matric certificate or qualification, that's nothing really. Yeah. Even in today's terms, it's like you're uneducated. You need to have a career, a qualification of some sort. But the people that have been kind to me, to help me, being my mother's support, my stepdad's support, and a Canadian couple that I would meet later who paid for my high school fees, had just given me the base that from here it's up to you, you can make your life. And that's why I went up and looked for a job. And I looked everywhere, there was nothing, but I never gave up. And one day I found a construction company that was starting a very big building project. And I went to the foreman and I said, I'm looking for work. And he pointed at a corner. There were tools that were lying idle. It was a pick and a shovel. And I picked one of them, and he pointed where we're going to work. I crafted for 9 hours, and then when I went home, I was utterly exhausted. I was very tired. And it took me a lot of thinking the next day whether do I want to go back, and I realized that you have no option, you must go back. For 2.5 years, I worked as a manual laborer, really grafting, with the pay being so little, and it was very disappointing. So yeah, that sort of introduced me being at 17, thinking about what my life was going to be.
Wow, compelling story, because you know it's heartfelt to picture you, because we've all seen you on the adverts, we've all seen you on TV, in the newspapers, some of the amazing achievements that you've made, but you basically started at the bottom, really did. And 2.5 years as a manual laborer, which means you finished high school around the age of 19, am I correct to say?
I was 21.
21. Therefore, at about 24, 25, that's until, as I process the time frame, until you stopped doing the manual labor. What happened after that? How do you get into adventure? How do you get into the sport that you've reached a elite level? I mean, many want to do many want to attempt what you've already done twice. How does that journey go? And walk us through that difficult path that you had to take.
So I walk out of high school, age 21, 1991, and I remember very well, it was a very stormy afternoon, I having written my final exam. And it rains down heavily. I walk out of the classroom, I realized this is the world, Sibusiso. It's time you go and hit the storms outside, because you're not coming back into the class.
Yes.
And as much as it was exciting that you finished high school, it wasn't exciting to walk out into the storm of life that I was going to face. But I think it was a very good introduction for me to say, this is what it's going to be like from now on. So I spent the 2.5 years in the construction company, and I don't like the job. And I learned one very important lesson that early, that you know what, if you don't really love it or like it, you don't want to waste your energy doing it for too long. You need to find an option. You want an alternative, something that will give you the energy to get up in the morning and say, I'm going to work.
Makes you excited and fired up.
Exactly. And I wasn't. So I needed to find the one thing that would excite me, and I didn't know what that was going to be. So I come from that old school where you write a letter instead of either a CV, no CVs, you write a letter to say, dear sir, you're looking for a job and you've just finished high school, you have nothing, and that is that. And you don't even know what job you're looking for, because you can't be specific. You don't.
You don't know what you don't know yet.
Don't. No, you don't. But somehow or the other, I ran out of addresses. You know that old book, nowadays people don't, they Google things.
Yes.
They used to be a telephone directory with like all addresses.
And the yellow pages
yes.
as well.
So I go in those books and I look, and I follow my instinct. If my instinct says you write to this company, then I will write to them, and I page through, write. So anyway, my eyes land on a nature reserve called Malolosha Nature Reserve. It is in the north of Swaziland, Eswatini today. And my instinct says, you write, apply to them. So I took their address, I wrote this letter, sending it to Malolosha, and having received hundreds of letters saying, sorry, we don't have any jobs. Malolosha, I get a reply letter saying, sorry, we don't have any jobs at the moment. However, we have kept your application just in case something comes up. So I'm like, oh, there's hope there. Yes. Maybe one day. And then 2 weeks later, I go to the post office, I get a letter saying, like, this looks similar. It was a letter from Malolosha, the senior warden, saying, if you make an appointment with me, we would like to interview you.
Beautiful.
And I'm still in the construction company. So I went to the foreman, I said, sir, can I have time off tomorrow? I'm going to do an interview. He was very kind. I was very open with him. And he says, what is the interview? I'm like, it is in a nature reserve. I don't even know what job I might get there. Don't know what people do in game reserves. And he says, well, probably they look after animals. But anyway, good luck. So I went and I walked into the door.
Good man.
greet the man, and he gives me a piece of paper, questions and answers. I write, and what sort of puts me in good stead with the interview was the first 10 years of my life. At the age of 7, I became a little head boy. So I headed goats and cattle in the bushveld. I knew a lot of birds. I knew animals. I knew trees. And these were easy questions to answer. We did the oral ones, and at the end, the man says, "Well done, sir, you've got yourself a job as a ranger."
A ranger.
I thank him, but there's dozens of questions in my head. Think, what do rangers do? I don't really know. But then from there, I thought, you know what? Just take the risk and see what happens. I went back to the foreman and I said, "Sir, I'm sorry, I've got to leave you. I've got myself a job as a ranger. I don't know what rangers do. I'm going to find out." This is in 1993, having finished school in 1991. 1993, I get the job in Malolo Nature Reserve as a tourist officer and game ranger. So the responsibilities were, you would work at the reception, signing people in and out, and then join the field rangers, where we did a lot of the anti-poaching patrols, making sure the game reserve was looked after. Then 1996, 3 years later, it's a Saturday morning, a tall gentleman walks into the reception. I was serving behind the desk. I sign him, I show him where he can walk. He disappears for a few hours. On the way out, this was the turning point in my life. On the way out, he walks in, he's signing out. As he signs the signing out book, he speaks to my working colleague. He says, "Sir, you work in such a beautiful game reserve. I've just done a hike today on my own. I just would like to come back here, and all I want to know is, are any groups of hikers that I can join here on a weekend?" And my work colleague correctly said, "I'm sorry, sir, people that come and walk here, they come in with their own groups of friends." And my heart started pounding, saying, talk to him, talk to him. I keep quiet. Then when he paused, the next question was, "What, do you know any fellow or guy I can hire or ask to accompany me?" Then I said, "That'll be me. I'm one of the rangers here, and then I know the game reserve quite well, and the trails. If you really want to do a walk, I'm happy to give you my time when I'm off duty." So then he introduces himself, saying, "Oh, my name is John. I'm from the UK. I've just arrived in the country, spent time in South Africa from 90 to 1994, but then I've been posted to work here as the British Consul General, and I don't know anyone. That's why I want someone to accompany me."
Wow.
So I said, "Well, I will tell you when I'm off duty, and then we can do the walk." And that's what we did. On our first walk, he walks off the car. He's wearing a pair of moccasins, very slippery shoes. We're going to be walking in a grassy bushveld. And for 4 hours, we were grafting, and I was trying to help him. He was falling all over the place. And I thought, well, you've given him your time, and he's probably enjoyed the walk, but he will not call again. Anyway, as a gentleman, he thanked me, and then he walked away. On the Monday morning, he telephones me saying, "I really enjoyed that walk with you. If one day, again, not today or next week, I would really like to do another walk with you." So I said, sure enough, I will let you know when. On the second walk, this is now where the big story starts. On the second walk, I say to him, "I'm going to take you to the most beautiful parts of this trail or this game reserve. We'll walk through between the river, crossing it several times. We'll get to a stunning waterfall, and you'll have a good time." So we go. As we were going, first, we were sort of rock scrambling over a cliff. He was not carrying a trekking pole, but he had always had a wooden stake. It falls over the edge, clatters down to the bottom, to a valley, and I see him frantically wanting to go grab the stick. I said, "Don't do it. I'm going to climb down and retrieve it for you." By that time, I'd never climbed. No rock climbing, no hiking, none of those things. That wasn't my sort of social activities.
Yes.
I climb down this cliff, retrieve his stick. We continue. We get to the bottom of the waterfall, and he looks up. He says, "It's a stunning picture, but is it possible for anyone to climb up to the top of the waterfall?" I said, "Well, if we don't swim, because I can't swim, I can help you rock scramble on the other side, and we surely can get to the top of the waterfall." And that's what we did. As we're walking down to where we were at the base of the waterfall, he says to me, "My friend, I've been watching you this morning when you climbed down to retrieve my stick, and watching you lead me up to the top of the waterfall. It is an amazing ability. But it begs the question, why there are not that many black people who climb mountains?" So I thought, but why?
That's a good question.
But why would anyone wants to climb a mountain? But I realized I needed to make an answer. So I said to him, I don't really know why people climb mountains, and we black people and most of us here in Africa are not the people that will look at a mountain and have this edge to want to climb and get to the top of it on a Saturday.
I fall in that group. I subscribe to that,
yeah.
to that mindset. Yes.
I said, we don't know why people do it. And I said to him then, in fact, he's speaking about that, even backpacking, which people call backpacking, where we sign them in here at the reception, and they're all looking excited and happy. They're out for 2 or 3 nights, and then when they come back, I don't see the same happiness and and the excitement that they showed when they were walking away. Some of them are limping with blisters, and I ask myself the question, but why?
Yeah.
So I thought, this is over. You've won this debate. But my friend wasn't going to be amazed by my answers then, because then he says to me, "It is amazing you say that, because I've been thinking about it. I don't seem to recall Everest having been attempted by an African since Hillary did it in 1953. And he says, but I looked at you today and I saw your climbing ability, and I think there are lots of other kids out there or Africans who have the same ability." So I said to him, "Oh, in that case, it doesn't mean that we cannot climb. We can climb, but I don't think we can afford it, because I didn't even know that you've got to pay for a permit. I thought you just buy a ticket, you travel overseas, you climb a mountain, you come back." And I said, "No, we don't have that kind of money." So he says to me, "Well, it is expensive, and people that get sponsorship, that do these things, get sponsorship." So he says, "Well, let's say you had all the resources to do it. Would you climb Everest?"
Random guy that you just met.
Yes.
He walked in
Yes.
there and started a conversation.
And he
Random
asked me this question.
Wow.
At that moment, cleverly, I would say cleverly, because I think that was the thing, that was the day I climbed Everest. So I said to him, "Oh, of course, if I have the resources, I would do it." And I think there's one thing I would like to sort of say why I would say it that way, without having climbed a mountain, without having seen Everest or picture of it. I've never read a book about Everest. I had no idea where Everest was. The one thing that made me to say, I think I can do it, I want to say that is because I believed that I could do it. I think it's very important for anyone to have the self-belief that they can do it, because there's a difference between you wanting to do it. It's a question of, do you believe you can do it?
There's a difference between I want to do it and I will do it. And I think, as you mentioned, he saw in your eyes, you really mean it. You will do it. If you had the opportunity, you'll do it. So what happens next?
So he says, "Well, if you don't mind, I will try and make inquiries to find out how people do it." And I said, it's yours to do. And then, so we become friends. From that second hike, when he mentions Everest, we became friends. We would do I would give him my time to go and hike in the same place. And then if he had longer weekends, then he would say to me, "I would like us to go to the Drakensberg." No camping. He would always put us in a little lodge or hotel, and then we'll do long day hikes. And slowly I was starting now to really enjoy hiking and at the same time realize why people do it. Because I would stand on a little hill and say, that is beautiful. I'm like, wow, that's what people do it. They just the scenery and being there. And the other was, you felt that it wasn't just walking. You had to focus. You had to commit the physical exertion. And when you've done that, it gave you that sense of achievement or accomplishment, because you feel like you've earned it. It didn't just happen when you get to the top of a peak. So it was all those things that I was just taking in slowly. So while my friend is trying to make inquiries, and he tells me that he wrote to Edmund Hillary, because Hillary was still alive, saying, how does one get involved in climbing mountains like Everest? And no reply from Hillary, but John never gave up. He kept trying and kept trying. In 1999, one of his friends, a South African who wanted to go climb Kilimanjaro with his son. So John wasn't interested, because I think him and his friend, the late Mac Rogan, they had climbed Kilimanjaro together
Okay,
But Mac wanted to go with his son, and John was like, I'm not interested to go back again. We did it together a few years ago. If you want to do it, he said, I'll be happy to sponsor you to go. So I said, well, thank you very much, because maybe it would just ignite this Everest thing that we once spoke about.
Because Kilimanjaro is a big deal. It's not. It's a big deal. It's a difficult mountain to climb.
People make a mistake of underestimating it.
It's a big deal.
And thinking that because it is not Everest, therefore it's a walk in the park.
It's a big deal, huge deal.
So I said to John, yes, I'll be, that would be very kind of you. I would take the chance. And this is August 1999. So we went and we climbed Kilimanjaro. And
first attempt, done.
First attempt, I summited. But
Beautiful.
I was sick because I made one of the mistakes, like the rookie mistakes, where the guy tells you, you can't run. You feel, I'm 29 years old, surely I can run, and I'm carrying nothing. You're carrying all my bags, then why do I walk slow? Yet the guy knew that altitude, you can't run. So myself and the younger lad, we ran chasing the porters and the guides every morning, arriving at camp with hours to spare. And we thought, yes, we're machines. And by day 3, I got sick. Like I had nausea, headache, all of the altitude symptoms and sickness that you don't. Luckily, because I'd read a line that said, the guide has the liberty and all the power to send you down if you fall sick. So I didn't tell anyone that I was sick.
You didn't tell anyone?
I just kept quiet, and then I did the real slow walking at the back, trying to recover, because I thought how embarrassing it was going to be to be chased out of the mountain because I was sick. And luckily I recovered before we got to the summit, and we summited. But the beauty of that experience for me was I reached the highest point in Africa at sunrise.
Oh.
And to watch the sunrise when you are standing at the highest point in Africa is one of the best moments of your life. It just ignited the energy in me to say, if one day I get that chance to climb Everest, then I would do it. And I said that day, if I go to Everest, then I will definitely do it to represent my continent.
Yes.
I'm going to do it for Africa. John retires in 1999. He goes back to England. And 2002, I get a letter. We write letters to each other, even today. Pen and paper.
Pen and paper, no email.
Paper. No email. Not unless it is very urgent and it's only like a short line.
Got you.
If it is something where I'm talking about my expedition that I've just done, or what is it? Just
handwritten.
Handwritten. So I received a letter from John, mid-2002. He says, I found a company that organizes these expeditions to all over the world on mountains. And next year, 2003, they are putting a team together to climb Everest during its 50th anniversary. He says, I feel this is a perfect opportunity for you to do it, since you once indicated that if you had the resources to do it, you would do it. We didn't have the resources because mainly it was money. I didn't have the equipment. I didn't have the experience, but there's one thing that I had. It was just the will to do it. And he says to me, tell me if you still are interested. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I want to know. He says, it is not my influence. I don't want you to say yes because you think that it's me saying it. It's your call, really. I'm not involved. So I started to think very deeply and profoundly, because he wrote to me in black and white saying, it will be tough. It's a big mountain and people die on the mountain. So he makes this very clear to say, when you make your decision, you should be very conscious of what could happen.
Yes.
Then posed the question to me, but why really? I think that was very important. I'm so glad that that question came that early, because up until today, I believe wholeheartedly that it is the why that keeps you going when things are tough.
Yes.
So I needed to identify with that immediately. So I started thinking, but I never wanted to climb Everest, and it is no interest of mine. It wasn't a childhood dream of mine. But the reason I said to him I would do it is because I wanted to prove it to myself, to anyone, and to everybody that whoever dares to do it and wants to work through it can do it. So it's time I go to prove that. And I said to him, of course, you know that I want to do it, because it's not for me. Just want to show the world that we Africans are also as capable as anybody.
Of course.
Send the letter through, it goes, and then Another one comes back, he says, okay, I've spoken to the company. They're well aware that you're inexperienced, and they've put together a sort of a little program. They say if you can climb these mountains, maybe they'll be able to assess you and see if you can be able to climb Everest. The reason is because you'll be teaming up with people who has vast experience, and you without the experience, you might find that there's a bit of a disconnect between you and them. So I said to John, first of all, we don't even know where we're going to get the money. Now, talking of money, it wasn't cheap. In 2003, to be able to climb Everest, or join a team to climb Everest without your travel, without your own personal climbing gear, we needed to pay £40,000.
Wow, in 2003. So that's like R500,000, more than R500,000.
In 2003.
Wow.
That's money that I could not fathom. I couldn't understand. I couldn't even think anyone could come up and say, here, you go climb a mountain. And that's why I said to my friend, it's because we can't afford it. And I was right. So, but then he taught me another, he taught me another lesson there, because the lesson was, which tends to be the thing with us, we ask the question, how much is it going to cost first?
Yes.
Before answering the question, do you really, really want to do it?
Yes.
For me, that is the start. You've got to want to do it, and then the money side, you think
you figure it out.
It plays second fiddle. But that was the thing for me. We didn't have the money, but I wanted to do it, and I told him that's what I wanted to do. And then I said to him, I can't climb all the mountains that they're listing, but at least I can take my 30 days leave. Then we can do the one mountain. And I went. It was October 2002. I went to the Himalayas, attempted 2 mountains. One was a little bit higher than Kilimanjaro. Then the other one was definitely a 6,000-meter peak called Island Peak. On Island Peak, then I saw everything that goes wrong on mountains.
Okay, 6,000 is
it's huge. It's massive. One person fell over a cliff.
Wow.
Not from my group, from another group, and we never saw them. And
never saw them again.
Never saw them again. And two people from my group got high altitude pulmonary edema. They had to be evacuated.
Wow.
But this is now reality happening right in front of me. I don't want to climb mountains. I'm an unclimber.
This is not the Drakensberg.
This is not the Drakensberg. And now.
And sorry, this is a snow climb, so it's a cold.
It's snow. Yes, it is. It is in the Himalayas. It's not too far from Everest. So you're climbing on mixed terrain.
Gotcha.
Both rock and snow.
And snow. Okay.
And snow.
This is real.
This is the real test.
Yes.
Of how much do you really want to do this?
Got you.
Anyway, we walked off Island Peak. We went to attempt another mountain. We didn't summit again because another accident happened. Another guy having issues on the mountain, and one of us getting seriously sick. So we aborted that. And I was a little bit sad or disappointed with the no summit of the third mountain, because I thought maybe they are going to say, because you didn't summit the third one, we can't let you into the team. So we came back and John spoke to them. I gave them my own feedback, how I felt. And I said, given the space in the team, I'll want to join next year. And people will say, but what about the training and the preparation? I'm the one person who would say, I'd never trained really. Because 2009, I climbed Kilimanjaro. We keep quiet. We don't talk about any other mountain. I'm still game ranging. 2002, I received this letter from John. And when I looked at it, I only had 8 months before the big climb. I just said, I'm going to take the opportunity, which is very critical as well. You can't postpone an opportunity.
No.
It's either you take it now and make it count, or it goes.
It's going to be a what if in your mind until the day you die.
So I took that, and then we went, and eventually John convinced these people to say, I've seen him. He may not have climbed mountains, but his physical ability, his mental strength is there. If you give him the chance in the team, he will probably prove you wrong. And eventually they sort of gave up. And I thought, when I think of it, I think they sat down and say, £40,000. Here's a fellow coming from the bushveld in Africa. He's never climbed a mountain. He will walk into base camp and find it near impossible, and he goes home. We have nothing to lose as long as we make sure he's safe.
Yes.
Then we're fine. We're covered. There was the mistake that they made, because I wasn't going to back away. I wasn't going to turn around. I'd made a commitment that even if I have to crawl to get to the summit, I was going to do it. So it was very big for me. when I left. Now, coming to sponsorship, because people say, but then where do you get the money? John tries, he was well networked, tried everybody, every person, every company. No corporates were interested in the idea. Only one man believed, John, and he was about to pay himself for me to go when he introduced me to another person who he thought had business connections in South Africa. He was in England. And it was just a 20 minutes meeting with this guy. And I said, I'm here in the Himalayas to do this little preliminary expedition. If I am accepted in the team, I will be going to Everest next year. But the biggest challenge is we don't have £40,000 to pay. So the guy said, well, I will go to South Africa and speak to my business colleagues and see what they say. When you come back from the Himalayas, I should have an answer because I'm leaving next week. So when I got back, he'd come back and said, well, I'm so disappointed to say that nobody seems to be interested. However, I have committed to paying. So he says, you tell me how much it's going to cost. John says it's £40,000. He says, well, I will hand in the check next week. And they signed me up and I got into the team. And so then the journey starts from there. Now I'm set to go to Everest and it's up to me to make it and to do it.
Unbelievable. So 8 months later, we land, we have our equipment, our permit. Is the first attempt the north side or the south side?
So 2003 was commemorating Edmund Hillary's ascent.
Yes.
So it was the 50th anniversary. Therefore, the main expeditions were on the south side.
On the south side.
So my one was also on the Edmund Hillary route, the south side, which was also perfect timing then. So we landed in Kathmandu.
Process that, like, how many days do you spend on the mountain?
So we land in Kathmandu. I get this big bag full of gear, which I have no idea what it is. And then we fly to a little town called Lukla. I meet the group, and there are 12 of us, 10 aspiring mountaineers in the aspiring to summit Everest, because most of them, they've had vast experience. I think we had a couple of guys who had climbed a couple of over 1,000-meter peaks. I think the one had
how many in the group have a successful summit?
No one has had the summit of Everest yet. Even the two leaders of the expedition, none of them. The one guy, Robert Anderson, who led the expedition, had made several attempts. I think when he was with me, he had 6 attempts, but no summit.
No summit.
No summit. So none of us had, nobody had summited. But other 8,000 meters, of course, they were well-known climbers. So the journey then from when we leave Kathmandu takes 10 days of trekking to base camp. When trekking, that's like little hiking, and you're walking through the Sherpa villages. After the 10 days, you arrive at 5,300 meters, which is the base of the mountain. So to me, that was, okay, we arrive at base camp, the next day we go to the summit and I go home.
No.
I thought it was going to be that quick and that easy. No, it wasn't to be. 10 days in, we arrive at base camp. Our expedition leader then starts speaking to us and painting the plan of what is going to happen for the next, not a week, the next 3 or 4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks.
Of us being there. So the first phase is the approach to base camp. The second phase is what we call the acclimatization phase, which is you're allowing your body to naturally adapt to the high altitude. Because as soon as you get to base camp, you can feel that you are into thin air because there's less oxygen. Therefore,
you can feel it.
You can feel it. I mean, to walk another meter takes an effort. To be able to come out of your tent to the dining tent, which is about 5 meters away from your sleeping tent, takes you a lot of time to get there. If you wake up in the morning trying to stuff your sleeping bag, you will have to stop and breathe, and then you start stuffing it in, and then you stop and breathe. So that shows you how difficult your body is feeling at that moment. Only at base camp. You're not even anywhere near halfway up the mountain.
Zone.
You are at base camp. So the first week of arrival at base camp is purely focused on adapting to base camp, just the environment around where you are. But when you are busy doing that as the climbers, your support team of Sherpas are busy establishing the 4 camps other than base camp. There's Camp 1 at 6,000 meters, Camp 2 at about 6,300 or 6,400, then Camp 3 at 7,300 meters, and then Camp 4 at 8,000 meters, which is now the death zone proper at Camp 4. Once the camps have been established, and once you feel that you have adapted at base camp, then you start planning to move to the next camp. But the way you move to the next camp is also frustrating, because you don't move in one go, moving this camp to this one and stay there, and then the next and stay there. You don't. Your home and base camp is always where you come back to. So you will spend one day to Camp 1, stay one night, sleep over. The next day you don't go to Camp 2. You come back down to base camp to recover.
Why? To recover?
To recover.
Okay. And you're doing this without the support of oxygen?
No, yes. That's without the support of oxygen.
Okay.
And the recovery is forced. It's not because you're feeling tired or feeling exhausted. It says the build-up, and that's very critical. You can't jump the stages. So you stay at base camp after having been to Camp 1 for about 2 or 3 days, because there's 10 people. Each one recovers at different times, but you talk to each other. Do you feel good to go tomorrow? No, not quite. Maybe another day or so of resting. Then you agree, you rest. Your second phase, your second climb up will be base camp, Camp 1 one night, climb another 400 meters to Camp 2. And then you stay one night, and then you come down again.
To base camp?
Passing Camp 1.
Oh my gosh.
All the way to base camp.
How long is that journey in terms of hours? How to Camp 1?
The first time you start from base camp to Camp 1, 8 hours.
8 hours.
8 hours, yeah.
And okay, so Camp 1 to 2 is not in my mind. I heard 400 meters.
Yeah.
How long does that journey take?
That again, which is very interesting, because that's where it makes you as an individual realize the progress your body is making. Because when you climb from base camp to Camp 1 the first time, it might take you at least 8 or 10 hours. But when you've been to base camp to rest and you come back up, you probably will be 2 hours faster or quicker, because your body is used to that.
Got you.
But climbing from Camp 1 to Camp 2, you're slower, because it is now a little bit of another 400 meter gain of altitude. And that takes you 6-7 hours one way.
Wow.
And then you get to Camp 2, you stay one night, come down, rest. Then your third and final, we call them rotations. Your third and final rotations, it's base camp, Camp 1 one night, Camp 2 another night, and then you climb
Danger zone.
To just below the dead zone, to 7,300 meters, Camp 3. It is on the Lhotse face, which is just a slab of snow at about a 45-degree slope. It's massive. Well, there's no room for error there, because it's just blue ice. So you've got your crampons on, and there's some ropes, so you propel yourself on a little clamp called Juma on a rope, because there's no free climbing. You've got to have your chest or your waist harness. Your boots are attached with these crampons, the spikes, and then you've got this leash where you push yourself on this little thing called a Juma, that when you slide forward, it sort of slides through, but if you fall or pull it back, it grips the rope.
Okay, got you. In case you slip or you take a tumble, and
then it holds you. So you're Jumering up, you get to Camp 3. Now I always say, now think human logic. You started at 5,300, you've been to 6,000, now you're at 7,300 meters, and the dead zone, which is your last and final camp, is at 8,000 meters. So it's only 700 meters of getting to Camp 4, and then only 800 meters to the summit. So logically, human logic will be like, okay, from 7,300 up to Camp 4, up to the summit and walk out. The mountain way of climbing mountains is you can't do that. You've got to return back to Camp 2, down to Camp 1.
No, down to
base camp, and sit and wait. And by that time, you are third or fourth week. It's a month. So you arrive beginning of April, end of March, beginning of April.
Realistically, you're gonna climb July. You're gonna make the final attempt.
In
Final summit, June, end of June,
no, beginning of June.
beginning of June.
From mid-May up until the end of June, because you're arriving end of March, beginning April. So the entire month of April you're
And
doing
what
these
season
rotations.
is that? That's summer.
Yes, they are summer.
Yes.
The spring. It is spring.
Spring.
It
And,
is
and
spring.
you're dealing with minus
Minus 15
-15.
on a warmer day.
And on a cold day, minus 40, 30, 40.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So now we've been to Camp 3, the blue ice,
Yes.
where,
Yeah.
I mean, moving 10 meters can
Oh.
take you minutes. It's not even
Hours.
it's hours.
Hours.
Hours
Yeah.
to move 10 meters.
Remember, because you are into thin air, so every step you're gasping for air.
And there's no oxygen yet.
No oxygen yet.
No.
You're still relying on ambient oxygen.
No one's using oxygen.
No one is
no
using
one on
oxygen.
your team.
Not unless you're sick. You have a condition that forces you to do that.
Okay, got
but
you.
no one is using oxygen between
In
from
your
base
team.
camp to camp 1 to camp 3.
So 3 weeks on this
Yeah.
beautiful mountain, and you've gone to Camp 3 and now down to base camp again.
Yes.
So
yes.
how long does that journey take?
From camp 3.
Yes.
Oh, it's 2 days. It's 2 days because camp
You're
3
sleeping at Camp 1,
you sleep at camp 2.
at Camp 2.
Then from camp 2 now you can, because your body is feeling stronger and you're climbing faster, you leave camp 2 bypassing camp 1 straight to base camp.
And you spend a
Everest.
couple of days there just relaxing.
Relax. But the relaxing is not determined by just you and your body, how you feel. It is also determined by outside conditions, being weather, because you are sitting and consulting with the weathermen to see how the weather is going to be like for the next few days. And we were very hopeful that maybe we would spend about a few days to about a week resting, and then we get a clear and then we go. So there was the sort of wish.
So unless there's a clear
wish-
from base camp,
You
because-
don't go.
because they have to, I just want to process this with you. They have to literally give you a clear for, because you're gonna hike up to Camp 2, sleep
Yes.
there. This is how I figure it out. Camp 3, sleep there, wake up very early, 12 o'clock at night, 11:30, 12, and then do the final summit. So they have to give you a 3 to 4 day period window. Is that correct?
You're looking at about a week.
A week?
It has to be 7 days,
It has
at
to be
least.
7 days
Yes.
of clear weather.
which is unheard of in
Yes.
most cases. Yes. So you're very correct. Once you got given the clear, the
How does that- how does
the
that
main
feel?
one that we were specific on is when you get to camp 4. How is that like? Because that's where you want less wind, no snowstorms in the afternoon. So once you get given that, then you start planning your start from base camp to camp 2, and then to 3, and then to 4.
Okay, so they're giving you weather conditions on Camp 4.
Yes,
And it
that's
needs
how.
to be a week.
It has to be, because it's an up and down. You're
Yes.
going up and down.
Yes.
So we sit, and it's now beginning of May. We're now beginning of May, and we're waiting at base camp. There are other teams. Then you start going back to the challenges, because it's not as easy, frustrating as it is to say we're going up and down. It's not like you're dealing with easy climbing. There was the Lotse phase, which I mentioned. Below the Lotse phase, there is a big area called the Western Combe, where you're crossing hundreds of crevices, which people fall in, and sometimes people die or get injured. And temperatures, as I mentioned, as soon as the sun goes down, -15, -20. So when you are still doing all of these are the things that are still challenging you, asking the question,
And you can't breathe.
but why? Yes, and you can't breathe.
But why?
So if you don't really know clearly the reason why you are there, why you're enduring all this hardship, then that's when you pack your bags and go home.
Got you.
Easily as that. So that's very important. But then the most excruciating part of the climb is once you've done your acclimatizations, you come back down to base camp to rest. It is the waiting game for that weather wind opportunity, because that is determined by someone else, nature, not you.
Do you have a window, a time window between when you are Camp 1, 2, 3, and then you back at Camp 2, and then at base camp? How long before the weatherman gives you the thumbs up before you have to reclimatize? I don't know if I'm asking the question the correct way. Is it, let's say, for example, if you stay at the bottom for 2 to 3 weeks, does it become dangerous because you need to reclimatize?
It does. Yes, it does. So
there is a window of that as well.
There's a window of that as well. So the way we play it is such that you don't stay put at base camp. Once, if the weather is closing on the mountain, you can't go up the mountain, then you start thinking of programs that you can apply or do where you're doing walks.
Okay.
You need to be active.
Okay.
You need to be active, climbing a little bit, because I think they end up coining a phrase where they say climb high and sleep low. So
yes.
every little 100-meter gain, good for your body. So you remain active, because I mean then it becomes much of a torment to sit. Even if you're doing activities, if you come back and looking at the bigger goal and you realize you're not going to go, it just, your morale goes down.
Got you.
Your morale just dies.
So you get that window. So clear,
so
to go.
8th of May, we get a weather, it was just a few days before the 8th of May, we get a weather forecast that says we could go. And my team and I says we want to be one of the first few teams to go up, pack our stuff, get resupplies at Camp 2, and then we start. We climb all the way up to Camp 2, like in one go, no problem at all. And we arrive at Camp 2.
No oxygen.
No oxygen. We can feel that, your body is now saying, I'm in this game, I'm acclimatized. I must say, though, that other people, because educational, other people they find it impossible to acclimatize fully, even after the 4 weeks.
Okay.
We had 2 guys that couldn't, and they couldn't get to Camp 2. Their body just said, it cannot happen.
Got you.
And then they left and went home, which was quite sad. But it does happen. It's not like everybody acclimatizes during the period. But,
got you.
But it depends on how your body is sort of responding
Genetics,
to it.
how
yes.
you are wired, yes.
So we arrive at Camp 2, we're excited, this is going to happen. But somehow it starts snowing profusely during the night.
Oof.
Like heavy snowfall that night. Anyway, we still are hopeful, and we get up in the morning, we start dressing up, we start climbing for about 100 meters or 200 meters. There's so much powder snow. You're plunging your feet into this powder snow. The challenge with that, though, is all these hundreds of little crevices, some of which are lethal, are well bridged. They were so hidden, so easy to make an accident. But sensibly, the leaders looked at the conditions and they said, this is impossible. We can't climb higher than here. Sorry, we need to go back. So we turned around, went to our camp at Camp 2. We sat down, made contact in the morning with base camp to check what is the weather pattern looking like. And they broke the sad news to us. They said, actually, there's a big snowstorm coming. If you guys get out of there as quickly as you possibly can, the better. We packed our bags all the way down to base camp. That was our first sort of unsuccessful attempt.
So that's the first one, and it's unsuccessful.
Unsuccessful.
That's frustrating, man.
Again, we sit at base camp, not for like one day. It took us 7 days of waiting at base camp, getting up in the morning, looking up the mountain. You can see the storm on the mountain.
Can you see the summit, the peak from the base camp?
Not exactly, but
exactly.
You can see its flanks. You can see that actually, if you just go over that, you're at the top.
Okay.
So you can see it, but not the actual summit.
Okay.
Because you sort of go around, to a corner before you go up.
Okay.
Camp 4 is situated furthest, then you go up. But you can look up and say, okay, it's not great up there, because what happens is Everest picture, mainly that people see it is always covered in a little white cloud.
Yes.
And that cloud is not a cloud, but it is the powder snow being blown into the atmosphere forming that cloud. So when you wake up in the morning, your first sight, you're looking up towards the mountain and you see that cloud, you lose your appetite because you know you're not going to go anywhere. So, but anyway, 7 days later, we got it clear, excited, we go again. We bolt up to Camp 2.
Sleep.
Climb to Camp 3, sleep. Climb to Camp 4. We don't want to sleep at Camp 4. We want to rest for a few hours, but you always start your attempt at night. Depending on how you feel and what the team is agreeing on, you can start at about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. or midnight if the team is going stronger. But what determines the timing of your start from Camp 4 is how strong you are climbing. If you're climbing slow, then you start early in the night. So we wait up until to about the sun goes down in the evening, and then we would rest a few hours and then go up. Still hopeful, and the weather was looking quite promising up until just before sunset, when we started feeling that the wind was picking up a little bit, because you don't want wind, but it was still within acceptable climbing conditions for speeds. After dinner, we realized the tents were shaking like vigorously, and then temperatures, ambient temperatures, you're looking, everything. If it is 20 degrees, then it's probably about 35 outside. Assessment was such that we couldn't go. This is 19th of May.
Shucks.
So the two leaders meet and they discuss, and they come to us and say, we think we won't be able to start tonight. We will stay in the dead zone at Camp 4. We will stay here and see tomorrow morning how things are like. Then we will attempt tomorrow night. So we all agree on that. We sit in the dead zone. We're using, by this time, we're using supplementary oxygen. You sleep on oxygen, you're moving around, you've got a bottle or a cylinder.
How big is the tent?
It's a two-person's tent.
Okay,
it can only fit two people.
Okay.
So only two people
and
sharing.
There's a bunch of tents
yes,
around. And how do you eat? Because there's weather and that.
Yeah, so, you eat inside your little tent.
Okay, got you.
So in my climbing days, your porters, your Sherpa guys will bring snow, and then you've got a little stove inside, and you cook and melting snow into water.
Yes.
Then you make your food, which is freeze-dried food, easy to make. Just pour hot water in it, you stir it, you leave it for about a few minutes, then you eat it.
Okay.
So that's pretty easy to make, but the challenge is just bringing the water into the boil, because
yes.
it is at high altitude. It doesn't really takes time for you to bring a cup of coffee.
Got you.
So it's just that effort. Once that's done, that's fine. So we agree that we will wait and see how the evening of the 18th is like. In the morning, it's a beautiful morning, clear blue skies, but the wind up above us is pumping. You don't want to be up there. You don't want to be up there. Anyway, we sort of hold hope that it might improve or change. At about late afternoon, the wind dies down, giving us a glimmer of hope that this is going to happen. We're going to summit tonight or tomorrow morning. Anyway, in the evening, we start. 19 May, we start in the evening. But we started about 8 p.m. because we thought we were climbing stronger. 8 of us all together with the 2 people that had left. We start, we climb another 100 meters, 200. So when you start at 8,000 meters, you only have 848 meters of altitude gain. Doesn't sound like anything, but that will take you a good 15 hours one way. 848 meters. In kilometers, it's even less than 5Ks actually, but it will take you that long. So we slog along slowly, and it's promising. You're seeing stars, they're getting closer, it's beautiful. It is encouraging. We're feeling inspired to want to go and do this.
You're seeing stars that are closer. I just, it made sense what you said. And they are, because at no point on our beautiful Earth will you be closer to the stars than at that point. How does...
And see them as pure
is it
as
a clear day? Clear night?
Yeah, clear night. You see the billions of them, and it feels like you can stretch your arm and touch
one.
But they're out there. But it is beautiful. But it is cold. It is very cold. And you're slogging along. It was just about midnight. So we were 3 hours into the climb. We hear this sound. That sound like a jumbo jet taking off.
Ooh.
It wasn't a jumbo jet. It was the jet streams approaching from just below the valleys. And then within minutes, it had hit us. We were blanketed in this cloud of snow and wind. It was near a blizzard, actually.
Wow.
So in the midst of it, with little head torches flicking all over the place in a state of panic, we start seeing, because there were other groups ahead of us who started earlier, they're coming down. And you could tell that there's no way they've summited because of the timing. they're turning around, and the one was a South African group led by my friend Alex Harris. So I see Alex, because they have nose flaps with the South African flag. I'm like, Alex, what's going on? He says, guys, you don't want to go up there. Up there, it's even worse. The wind and the ropes are, if there's no rope, the Sherpas were still fixing the last part of the rope section. So that needs more time to work on. In this storm, you can't do anything. So we're going back down. So we try to sort of, okay, go down, safety first, but let's just see if we can progress. Maybe the storm will subside. It didn't. It lingered on, and it was so vicious that you see a guy in front of you who's holding on this little rope being blown off their feet.
Wow.
That's how severe and how vicious the windstorms were. So all of us turned back that night, and when it happened, we were at 8,600 meters.
Oh,
it was
man,
248 meters.
It's here. It's right here.
Yeah.
So where do you go down to base camp?
We went as far down as Camp 4 that night, up until the early morning hours, because my team and I had been in the dead zone for almost 2 nights.
Yes.
We were, by health standards, forced or compelled to descend back down, further down to Camp 3, all the way down to Camp 2. Other teams then left. I think the other groups, even the South African group that Alex was leading, they went to base camp, and eventually they just abandoned the attempt and went home. So we sat at Camp 2 dejected and feeling defeated. And in fact, for me in particular, I thought that was it. I wasn't going to get another chance, because I didn't know that we would be given another attempt on the same season. So we sit at Camp 2, at our dining tent, where we sort of review the progress and what happened. Then the leader of the expedition says to us, well, in the early days of our planning, we had contingency in food and in oxygen for 3 attempts. So we've had our 2 attempts. We only used 1 on the oxygen. So we still have enough oxygen up there to mount a 3rd attempt. If you guys still want to go, it's up to you, but we will have to rest more and then we go. But ideally, the suggestion will be to go back to base camp, rest more there, because life conditions are much better, you eat better, and your body recovers well. Then we say, no, we're not going down to base camp. We'll sit here rather and wait.
This is Camp 2.
Camp 2 at
Okay.
6-4. We'll sit at Camp 4 and at Camp 2 and wait, and the weather clears within the next couple of days, then that's fine, we go. If it doesn't, then I think it's time we pack our bags and go home. But at least we will wait for a day or 2. And that day or 2, we waited, and then other teams summited that when we're going up, when we're going down, they were going up. So that gave us some hope that the weather was getting a little bit calmer and when we could go. So when we got given a clear 24 May, we were ready to go on the 25th, and we got back to in the dead zone on the 25th of May, rested in the afternoon at about 9 p.m. again with little head torches, oxygen mask on. We hit the trail going towards the summit. That night, temperatures were estimated between -36 and -50, the coldest. It was a night where I couldn't feel my feet at some point. And I'd read about this thing called frostbite, and I thought, that's it, Sibusiso, your feet are gonna go, you're gonna lose them. And it was agonizingly, painfully cold. I think every step you took, it asked the question, why are you here?
Yeah.
Why are you suffering like this?
Jeez, my friend.
It was just remembering where you come from. Why did you make that decision in the first place that you want to be here? That sort of kept me going and going and going. Then I was very delighted when I got to the place where we got stopped by the storm to look around and still see that it was still given a clear. We could still go. But in the early morning hours, the wind started picking up, and by that time we were sort of spread apart, because I think it is also a very important lesson for all of us to learn there, is that you may be part of a team, but there is some point in your life where you will be disconnected from the team. You're together, but you are alone. On your own. You've got to do it on your own. So I knew that my teammates were still there, but I was alone with my climbing Sherpa was behind me. And I looked up and I saw this ridge, very knife-edge ridge. And I thought, surely there mustn't be further than where, as far as I can see. But at about sunrise, I think I stopped and I looked behind towards the east, and I saw this vastness of the Himalayas and all these mountains that when I was at base camp looked gigantic, and now they were tiny. They were like small, and then I realized, no, you're almost at the summit. But as I was pondering on that, I saw two climbers from my group from Mexico. These young Mexicans came climbing down. I couldn't see the leaders, and I said, I'm not wasting any ounce of energy going up if we've been told to go back. I'm standing right here. And they got to me and they said, hey, Sibusiso, keep going, because over this ridge, that's where the top is. That's where David and Robert are waiting. These were the two leaders. They're waiting for you there. We wanted to be with you there, but it is too cold and windy, but look after yourself. So I said, be safe going down. And then I pushed up this ridge, and then the next I picked up my eyes. So that's the final
couple of meters.
Yes. The next time I picked up my eyes, I saw Robert waving, like encouraging me to come over. That was the moment I then realized that after all that we'd gone through, you have summited this mountain and nothing will stop you now. You are there. The message that you wanted to share with the world, that Africans are as capable to achieve great heights and great things just like anybody, but they have to be determined and they have to persevere, and you're about to send that message to the world. I couldn't contain myself. I think it would be impossible for anyone really not to feel humbled at that moment when you see that the entire world is about to be at your feet. But what got me the energy to keep taking that step and to the top was just remembering the energy from the entire continent. And I stood at the top on the 26th of May. It was about just before 8:30 South African time.
In the morning
when I summited. It had taken me 14 hours one way.
14 hours?
14 hours one
from
way.
From Camp 3?
From Camp 4.
From Camp 4. Yes, because you slept at Camp 4.
Yes.
14 hours one way.
14
and
hours
you can't feel your feet, and every single step
is hard.
Is agonizing pain.
It is. It is painful. It is slow. Your mind, because there's something about the mind. Your mind says, I can walk 10 steps non-stop. And then you feel encouraged that you will do it. And then you start stepping, you realize you can't. You just have to take the one and stop. Take the one and stop. So that is where the challenge is, the physical and the mind game, those two that play.
So process, what are you seeing?
So as I approached Robert and David, who were waiting there just to welcome me at the summit.
And it's also their first
summit. And I have my backpack with my oxygen cylinders. And my friend John had said to me, funny enough, he said, Sibusiso, if by any chance, I'm not doubting it, if by any chance you summit, you stand at the top of Mount Everest, please, I don't know how easy it would be for you to do it. Do take off your mask. We want to see an African on the summit.
Yes.
So I get there and I think, I must take off my mask. So I sort of, but what if you can't breathe? So I slowly took it off and I felt, okay, I'm alive. I can still breathe. So I put the bag down, picked up the flag. It was so windy, so it was flapping all over the place. Then I asked Robert to hold it. So my picture at the summit is myself and Robert Anderson, the leader, holding, and then David takes the picture. And we were only about 5 minutes at the top. And now what you see, it's the entire Himalayas, like the world. You could just see the world.
Was it a clear day?
We were very lucky that it was the most clearest of days with no cloud, no nothing. You could just see as your eye can see. But just mountain after mountain after mountain after mountain. And you couldn't see the end of the world. I think it was a sign there, a message to say, you know what? You can't be at the top, but you can still see further.
Yes.
Up until you get to that furthest point, only then can you see further. You were like, that's not the end. So after the 5 minutes, picked up my bags, put on my oxygen mask, and then we started going down again.
How long does it take you to get down, and where do you sleep that night?
It took me 9 hours
to
to
camp
climb down to Camp 4.
4, and that's where you sleep.
You sleep over at Camp 4 because you arrive at night. Then you while away the night, and then the next morning you climb from Camp 4 down to Camp 2, and then Camp 2 down to base camp, and then base camp is a walk home.
So when you get to Camp 4, like, do you take off your shoes?
Yes.
You take off your shoes. So like, process, how does life come back into your feet? Because I come from a cold country, from Bulgaria. That's where I was born. So I understand the cold, but few people do. Like, I've never experienced the cold that you have. I don't want to. It's not for me. But you know, when you take off your shoes, can you? How long after? Because now it's 14 plus 9.
Yeah.
You've been exposed to this pain.
Yes.
For 24 hours.
Yeah.
How long before you get feeling in your feet, in your thumbs, in your fingers, in your ears? How does that process take place?
So with me, it happened as soon as the sun came up in the morning, just before we even got to the summit. Then I started feeling that I could.
Okay, so the temperature went up a little bit.
The temperature goes up, then your body warms up, and the oxygen is helping you as well. So it is still cold, but it is not numbing cold.
Okay, got you.
So when I get to the camp, I take off my feet and then change to fresher socks. I realized, okay, my feet are intact. I've not had frostbite, but it was this close to getting frostbite.
Really?
Because a week later, the skin on my toes started peeling off.
Really?
To show that it was that close.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the first attempt sounds nearly impossible. Does the second attempt, because the second attempt is obviously from the north side. Process that with me. So how many days in total were you on the mountain on your first attempt in total? How many days?
It took us, we summited on day 60.
60? That's 2 months.
That's 2 months.
And the second attempt?
So the second attempt comes 2 years later because, again, as I said, it's one of those things that you cannot just wake up in the morning and say, I want to do it. There must be a reason why you want to go back.
Yes.
I wasn't now getting excited that I've climbed Everest and I want to do it again or climb another mountain. For me, it was like, this is too difficult and I can't even afford to go back financial wise. So I wasn't even looking at going back. And then I get asked the question many times when I was doing interviews, will you go back? Would you do it again? And I'd always said, no, I wouldn't do it. Anyway, I was just sitting, in my team, there was a lady from Canada who said she was on her last of the 7 summits. That's when I got to know about the 7 summits, which I didn't know about. And these are the continental peaks. And she said, I'm climbing it as a personal agenda, but I'm also doing it for charity. So I asked her, how do you climb mountains for charity? She explained, and I thought, if I had known about it, I probably would have done it for the same reasons. So as I was sitting at home 6 months later, thinking about why would you want to go back to Everest per se? And I thought, well, the only reason I want to do it would be to raise awareness about quality education for children. And if I raise money, then that would be it. Somehow it sort of grew, and 2 years later I went and thought, well, now that I've been to the south side, if I'm going back to Everest, then I have to do it on the north side. And it takes us 75 days.
Wow.
It was even much more longer. But the reason that it took us that long was it was the worst season in the Himalayas when it comes to climbing, because the mountains didn't want anyone on the mountain. In most years, by the 10th of May, there's this known weather window that happens. So that's why you should be ready, having acclimatized, waiting for that weather window to opportunity. So by the 10th of May, people start summiting either by the south side or the north side. But in 2005, when I went, not one person had summited the mountain up until after the 25th of May, which was unheard of. And we were all sitting and waiting patiently for a perfect weather condition. About the 21st of May, some groups took a very limited weather opportunity, and then they all came back with frostbite. And other people had actually, I think a number of people had died on the mountain. So that wasn't a good move. So we had to wait, but we only had the one attempt, but it took us, we submitted on day 73.
Day 73. And was it a camp 1, camp 2, camp 1, come down? Same.
No, so the north side is demarcated differently. So you've got base camp, which is at a similar elevation, and then on south side base camp 5-3, north side 5-3. Then on the north side they've also got ABC, or advanced base camp,
okay,
which is a little bit higher. It's about just under 5,000. It's over 5,400 meters, or close, almost 6,000 meters. That's advanced base camp. So once you've acclimatized or done the rotations, then you move from base camp and get stationed at advanced base camp.
Okay,
that's where you launch.
Okay.
From advanced base camp, you climb to camp 1 at 7,000 meters at the North Col, and then from there you go to your 8,000. But your summit attempt on the north side is at 8.3. That is where the advantage is. That 300 meters makes such a big difference. You start at 8.3, you go for the summit, come back past 8.3 down to camp 2.
Okay, got you. So that's the difference.
That's the difference.
Fascinating, my friend. That is, you have experienced something that very, 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 very few people will ever experience. I'm still waiting for the helicopter ride. I would love to join that team on a very good day. But to
it is a beautiful ride. In fact, I was very lucky to arrive at base camp and found that other guys had organized to be helicoptered out. So we all opted to do that, and which was quick, because then the walkout is another 10 days almost of walking out. So but that helicopter view is something.
It's something different.
Else. You must do it.
Amazing.
You must do it.
Amazing. I can't, process. And unless you've been there, then you'll be able to get all the sensations in. But from photos and from clips and videos, you can't. It's not the same.
It is very different. And people say, "How was it?" I'm like, "Well, I can try and say it, but you can never find
the right words.
There will never be an existing word to do it. For you to feel it the way I did at that moment." I think it's a personal thing, and it's okay. That is okay, and it's one of those things that will live with you forever. I don't think I will lose that moment when I eventually took the 1 and 2 steps and I stood at the top and I looked and I realized that you are here. It was very special. But for me, that entire 60-day journey was life transforming, life changing. I think I haven't been the same ever since.
Beautiful. Sir, you are not only a proud South African, I'm proud, to have been able to meet you as a fellow South African. So I'm born in Bulgaria, but made in South Africa.
Wow,
this is my home.
Yes.
It's been such an inspiring story, to the millions of us that have heard about you, fortunate enough to meet you, and you are a gentleman with a fire of a lion inside you. So thank you very much for coming out, sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. It's a beautiful story. You had me mesmerized. My eyes were big like this. I don't know if the camera, so I'm processing everything, and you're a very good storyteller as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your life lessons have taught myself a lot, the people in the studio and the thousands of people that will see the interview. You have definitely left us better than you found us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much indeed.
It was an honor to meet you.